Hello everyone, Sientir here with more Kingdom Come Deliverance. And boy, things have gotten kind of busy. So last time we had a lovely chat recounting the events that occurred. Our poor young man here, Henry, had some nightmares that misconstrued things about his parents and their deaths. And then we saw that the people of Skalitz, who had been holed up in the castle, managed to flee during a storm. I'm in part recounting for your benefit and for mine. So, at this point, at this juncture, I have a quest to talk to Sir Robert. So that's what we're going to do. Once these guards find their ways around.
I need to have a word with you.
Yes, sir.
What is it you need? I could use an extra pair of eyes, and yours are keen. Will you keep watch of the battlements with my men?
Is that a request or an order?
I'd rather it was a request you answered yes to.
Of course I'll help. I'll have to pay you back somehow after all you've done for me.
Splendid. And don't worry, I'll tell the men to relieve you later. Take care.
Okay. I'm trying. There's not... I'm going to be honest here. Visibility's garbage. Utter garbage. What does this quest look like? Keep watch on the battlements. Okay. I mean, I will do that. I will do that very damply. Owing to my lack of umbrellas. Oh, yeah, maybe the thunder or the lightning can help me see out of these battlements. Mostly I can just see rain. Very moody, this game. There's a single torchlight over there. Oh.
Wandering around like a stray sheep. Must be your first watch, eh? I don't think anything much will be happening today. You can just lean against the wall and wait till morning. I'll show you what's what.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. Wait until morning. So that's like 5? Yeah. Ah, we can begin to see some stuff. Most excellent. Boy, that's some pounding rain. It'd actually be hard for a rain to stay this hard for that long. The clouds tend to run themselves out, but you know, it's a game doing game things. C to crouch. If you want to sneak in somewhere, make sure no one sees you or hears you. Whether you're seen or not depends on the light and your clothing. Whether they hear you depends on the surface you're moving on and your attire, especially footwear. Okay. Can I do that to put... that puts... draws my sword. I don't need to draw my sword. Do I hold one to put the torch away? I don't think I need it anymore. There's enough daylight. Watching the fields. Wait. What's going on now? I mean, I waited until morning. Of the Outer Bailey. I'm surprised I can run this soon after my leg, but you know, game. Oh, that's fun. You can tackle people if you're running towards them. Oh, okay, so this is the Outer Bailey. Oh, hey, look. The rain suddenly magically finished. Wow, that army is huge.
See how the self-appointed king wins the love and respect of his loyal subjects.
Indeed, Robard. Sigismund of Luxembourg has a rare talent for winning people over to his cause. We may be in for a surprise, though. I don't think he will set his heathen dogs on us today.
Greetings, Lord of Talmberg.
That's the bastard who led the attack at Scarlet and killed my parents.
Don't be an idiot. Do you want to end up like them?
I am Sir Markwart von Aulitz. I come in the name of Sigismund of Luxembourg, King of Hungary and Croatia, who has resolved to strike against those who disrupt concord in the land and to restore order in the name of his brother, King Wenceslaus IV.
Restore order by burning and pillaging the king's estates.
Greetings, Sir Markwart. The efforts of the king's brother to bring order to this chaotic land are undoubtedly noble. It seems to me, though, that he and his army have somewhat strayed. As Burgrave of Prague Castle, I am entirely beholden to the king, and here in Talmberg divine peace reigned until your arrival. To what then do we owe the honor of your visit?
Yesterday, His Majesty took action against the enemy of the kingdom, Sir Ratsig Kobila, who has been using the silver from the Skalitz mine to fund insurrection against the crown. Unfortunately, the insurgent escaped. Would you happen to know, noble sir, where he might be at this time?
As far as I know, the Sir Radzic of which you speak is the king's hetman at Skalitz. I find it hard to imagine that he would rebel against our king. Nevertheless, I can assure you that Sir Radzic is not at Talmberg. He would be a fool indeed to flee from one castle, where he has little chance of defense, to another, where he has even less. Or do you take the view that my humble manner is any obstacle to your army?
Am I to inform the king then that Sir Ratsig Kobila is not at Talmberg and that he has your loyalty?
Sir Radzic Kobila is not here, and I have no intentions of getting embroiled in affairs from which I have nothing to gain.
Very well, sir. As you wish. I will relay your words to the king in the hope he will be as well disposed as you seem to be.
Those who have clean consciences and goodwill may find themselves well disposed even at moments like this, when there is little cause for joy. Farewell, sir.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Nah, they're intentionally not letting us hear what he's saying.
My lord, you have my utmost admiration.
Get on with you, Robard.
Yep. There's something going on there. And it's going to be ugly. Bury your loved ones in Skalitz. Talk to Sir Robard. Get a horse. Seems like a fine set of objectives. I feel like... Oh, good. Game saved.
Good day to you.
I have to get to Skalitz.
Sir Robard, I need to get to Skalitz.
What would you do there, lad? Sigismund might have left, but the place will be swamped with robber barons, brigands, deserters, and other vermin. And anyway, your lord commanded you to stay here.
My parents died there, and I won't leave them to be ravaged by dogs. I have to bury them.
Good God, boy. Do you want to throw your life away for those who can never get theirs back? Do you think that's what they'd want? Forget it.
Why did Sigismund burn down Skalitz and then come here too?
That's war for you, lad. Certain lords have resolved to take things into their own hands and eliminate anyone who doesn't share their view. Unfortunately, Sir Radzig is one of those. And what's more, he was sitting on a pile of silver that could help King Wenceslas's allies.
What happened in Kuttenberg?
Gutenberg, well, I'm just a simple soldier, but the good Lord gave me ears, and I've heard some things from Sir Divish and from those who fled from Sigismund's pillaging.
Were there many?
Indeed, but it was the Kuttenberg mercenaries who came to see me, because I knew them from before.
I see.
Listen, lad, these are all games of the high aristocracy. In Prague, a cabal of nobles rebelled against King Wenceslas, wealthy aristocrats who took against our king for reasons of their own. There's no doubt Sigismund had his fingers in the whole affair. Him and Wenceslas's cousin, Jobst. And that cabal helped him abduct the king.
So then why did Sigismund attack Kuttenberg?
Why do you think?
For the loot?
So he could loot it?
Correct. King Charles, may God grant him eternal glory, built Prague into a proper royal city, while King Wenceslas took a liking to Kuttenberg. After Prague, it's the most important city in Bohemia, in the entire Holy Roman Empire. He who commands the Kuttenberg silver is king.
So Kuttenberg sided with Wenceslas because he favoured it?
Now you're starting to understand. When Sigismund imprisoned Wenceslas and took control of Prague, the people of Kuttenberg began to raise an army against him. So with the attack on Kuttenberg, Sigismund killed two birds with one stone. He defeated Wenceslas's most powerful allies before they could stand against him, and also gained immense wealth.
Where did these Cumans come from anyway?
I don't know much about them, only what the Chamberlain said, that they came to Hungary from the east and settled there. They're godless barbarians and merciless fighters. The nobles used to say the Hungarian king shouldn't enlist them, because they dishonor our rules of warfare. But when there's power and money to be had, it seems that honor isn't worth my spit. And believe me,
Yeah.
it's always about power and money. Good luck to you.
I see. Well, I mean, Kuttenberg. Kuttenberg is today a district town of the central Bohemian region, 70 kilometers east of Prague. The founding of Kuttenberg, the official name of the city in the Middle Ages, came about thanks to the discovery of silver ore deposits in the vicinity and its location next to Sedlitz Monastery, the commercial and economic center of the region. City rights were acquired by Kuttenberg in 1318, after which time the economic activity of the city was taken care of by the so-called Erbauer, or royal clerk. To keep the operation of the mint and the mines to a high standard and safe, a list of legal edicts was issued. Ius Regale Montanorum, the mining regulative. The city soon became rich and had the same powers as the old town of Prague. The wealthiest inhabitants of Kuttenberg were the German population, while a lower class consisted of mine workers, smelters, mint workers, artisans, and servants. Almost every city dweller had some connection to silver mining, minting, coinage, or trading. The treasures of found and mined silver supported the development of other Czech cities, including the construction of new buildings in Prague. Yeah, this is an interesting one. When your money is based off of metal, because like in most of the countries of the world, money is either it's usually a fiat currency, which just basically means it has value because everybody agrees it has. I mean, all money has value because everybody agrees it has value, but there's no backing, right? A dollar, for example, a U.S. dollar, is just it's kind of a thing, and people make more of it, by which I mean the government, and so the relative value of a dollar is kind of based on how many dollars there are and things like that. And so what would happen is, at one point in time, silver was a prime currency money, or metal, I should say. And so you couldn't manufacture more money without literally acquiring more silver, and the amount of silver you had was directly proportional to the amount of money you had. So finding a source of silver would directly increase wealth. You had to be careful with how much you'd introduce because you could cause inflation and things like that, where suddenly there's just so much silver that it's worth less relative. But, that's kind of how some of that stuff works. So finding a good source of silver and the people in order to convert it into currency and stuff like that would directly increase your wealth because it was literally something that you could spend. So it's kind of interesting to think about how it is. It's like if you could somehow just walk around and just find dollar bills just in the ground that you could dig up. So, stuff to think about. Definitely a different way of how things worked. Anyway, the architecture of Talmberg is due to Wenceslaus IV. During his reign, the former timber houses were rebuilt in brick or as half-timbered. There were also churches, a Sterling Court, and other public works built at that time. Talmberg retains its Gothic genius loci to this day. Okay. I think we read about this, maybe? Actually, I'm not sure that we did. Abduction of Wenceslaus IV. Wenceslaus IV was a none too capable ruler, rather the opposite. During his reign, he was abducted several times in attempts to wrest power from him. The first time, in 1394, he is taken captive in one of his residences in Biron near Prague and taken to Wildburg Castle in Austria. The abduction was engineered by the opposing nobility, called the League of the Lords. In 1402, Wenceslaus was abducted for a second time by his half-brother Sigismund of Luxembourg, King of Hungary, who aspired to the Bohemian throne, with the support of the high nobility, and incarcerated in Vienna, from where he managed to flee with the help of loyal nobles in November 1403. Sigismund had, in the meantime, brought in higher taxes on towns and monasteries. Any towns that refused to submit, he conquered and ransacked. The conflict grew into a protracted civil war, which did not abate even after the death of Wenceslaus. The Battle of Nicopolis. The Battle of Nicopolis took place on the 25th of September 1396 between the Hungarian king Sigismund and the Turks, led by Sultan Bayezid. Sigismund's army was made up of soldiers from France, Burgundy, Germany, England, Italy, Bohemia, Poland, and other countries. In all, it was 10 to 15,000 strong. The Ottomans, who at the end of the 14th century controlled the entirety of the Balkans, numbered almost 20,000. The experienced Turkish combatants routed the Christian knights completely, largely because the Russian and French knights disobeyed orders, attacked the Turkish vanguard under the misconception that it was the main force, and were subsequently crushed. Those who didn't die on the battlefield were brutally put to death, reportedly up to 3,000 men. The wealthiest were taken prisoner and saved only by paying a ransom, which they paid over decades. The news of the defeat reached Paris. No one believed it, and those who had initially spread the news were put to death by drowning for spreading malicious lies. The Ottoman victory was a triumph of Islam over Christendom. The Turkish army represented a real threat to European countries, especially Hungary. Okay, there's more stuff here in society. I'm going to just read a few more entries here, I think. Blacksmith. Blacksmithing was one of the most important occupations since earliest times, because iron was a very valuable raw material. In earlier times, it was not deep mined, but only acquired from surface mines. Not a piece was allowed to go to waste. People even kept used nails. There was a blacksmith in practically every castle vicinity or village, who forged almost everything that was needed for agriculture: knives, axes, sickles, plows, hoes, etc. Other blacksmiths specialized in making swords, helmets, lances, harness fittings, locks, and jewelry. Yeah, think about needing to make like buckles and stuff, for example. The forge was most often a shed with a wall. Its essential equipment consisted of large bellows, an anvil, tongs, hammers, punches, files, etc. In a well-equipped forge, the smith could develop heat of up to 1400 degrees centigrade, or Celsius, whichever. Yeah, the bellows would of course been important for making the fire hot enough to get to that point, because it needs the air for it. Malters and brewers. Beer had since the earliest times been brewed by anyone with a know-how. It was only in the 13th century that brewing gradually came to be regulated. The rule stated that beer could only be brewed and sold by a fully fledged citizen who owned a house within the town walls. The right to brew closely relates to the 1 mile right, which dictated that none but citizens of a town were allowed to conduct urban trades within a 1 mile radius of the city. The technical process was supervised by the master brewer. The making of the malt and beer was dealt with by the maltster, and a brewer handled the fermentation and brewing. In domestic breweries, all these jobs would be done by one man. The shelf life of beer depended on whether the finished brew was filtered or not. Yeast remained in the brew, as well as acetic and lactic bacteria, contaminating it. Beer, then, quite unlike today, resembled a thick mush and was very nutritious, hence known as liquid bread. It had to be drunk through a straw to filter out foreign matter. Interesting. Sir Wenceslas was the patron saint of maltsters in Bohemia, while the legendary Gambrinus, though not a saint, was regarded as the patron of brewing. The Bohemian brewing tradition thrives to this day, and Czech beer is among the best in the world. Well, that's a subjective opinion. Tailor and draper. Until the 13th century, the tanners sold their wares for processing to suturers and cobblers. Cloth was made by weavers, but traded by drapers, who also often cut and sold it by the cubit, the length of the forearm. Only later, during the High Middle Ages, did tailors sew cut pieces into garments. Simple garments were sewn by women themselves for their families. It was an issue to make sure the garments were well sewn, since they were inherited and would often last for decades, with minor repairs. By the beginning of the 14th century, people in larger cities were paying ever more heed to fashion. A tailor would begin to specialize in only one kind of garment, hence we find coat makers, hosiers, hood makers, gantiers, hatters, and cape makers, and those who did alterations and repairs to old clothes. In a town the size of Rattay, the tailor had to turn his hand to general-purpose work. Taverns, inns, and innkeepers. The Czech word for tavern, hospoda, may originate from the Latin hospice, guest, hospitium, hospitality, shelter, though the more likely etymology is from the old Slavonic gospodia, the master of the house. Alehouses were an integral part of all medieval villages. Originally, beer was drawn in what was called the moss house, an area on the ground floor of a townhouse whose owner had brewing rights, while special-purpose taverns and inns came along later. These served as places for social events, meetings, trading, and lodgings. Some inns had rooms for overnight guests and special stables and spaces for carriages. These were called wagoners' inns and were located out of town at crossroads and along trade routes. The seating was more often outdoors than indoors. It was said of Wenceslas IV that he was fond of visiting taverns and alehouses to eavesdrop on what the locals had to say about him and to check that the owners were complying with his edicts. In the Middle Ages, no one took exception to alcohol. The Germans, Russians, and Czechs in particular were Europe's fabled drinkers. There was a formal curfew at dusk, or when the night watchman began his rounds, although drinking and feasting often went on until the early morning hours. In Kingdom Come Deliverance, we have tried to keep the image of medieval taverns faithful to surviving records. Wine grower. In Bohemia, wine growing began to spread from the 10th century onwards, due especially to liturgical reasons. Between the 11th and 13th centuries, vineyards were mainly for monasteries and the nobility, generally in similar places to where we find wine grown today, mainly in South Moravia. So that would be in the location that the game takes place in Bohemia. Due to the more favorable climate conditions, vineyards could, for a period, thrive even in Bohemia, but later, after a global cooling period, they died off again. Yeah, my impression is that wine requires enough heat to kind of grow properly, or grapes do. Anyway, taking care of vines kept vintners occupied all year round, the vintage harvest taking place from October to November, depending on the weather. Wine tended to be grown in places unsuitable for the cultivation of other plants, such as on rocky, south-facing slopes. It could take 3 to 4 years to establish a vineyard, and it would be good for 30 to 40 years. The grapes were harvested and put into vats where they were crushed by treading. White grapes were pressed immediately after crushing, and the juice kept in wooden barrels, tarred and sanitized with sulfur, where the wine was left to ferment. Red grapes were crushed and the seeds removed and left to ferment in open vats, stirred regularly. This produced what is termed the mash, and after a few days this was pressed and the juice poured into barrels. King Charles IV was a great wine lover who imported grapevines from France together with wine-growing know-how and granted numerous privileges to vintners. Interesting. We have some new characters as well. We have Jobst or Jobst of Moravia. 1354. Let's see, 18th January 1411. Okay. So that means they don't have information on when he was born, I'm guessing. Jobst of Moravia was Margrave of Moravia from 1375 and Elector of Brandenburg from 1388. He also held the throne of the King of the Romans, although he did so for a mere 15 weeks until his death, 1410 to 11. He was the son of John Henry of Luxembourg and the nephew of Emperor Charles IV. He achieved his standing in Europe due to military and political intrigues aimed primarily against members of his own dynasty, particularly Wenceslas IV, against whom he rebelled along with the Moravian forces in the so-called Margraviate Wars. He initially supported Sigismund of Luxembourg's efforts to seize the Bohemian crown, but in 1403 he began opposing him, and together with Albert IV, Duke of Austria, took part in a rebellion against him. His previous support for Sigismund was probably motivated more by self-interest. It ensured him future influence as long as it seemed that Wenceslas would be deposed and Sigismund or even Jobst himself would take his place. His campaign against Wenceslas won him and other nobles many privileges. Then, in 1402, when the situation changed, he rebelled against Sigismund and was even instrumental in liberating Wenceslas from captivity. We don't know whether the change was due to cunning or conscience, but to the end of his life he remained surprisingly loyal to Wenceslas IV. Towards the end of his life, he even stood against Sigismund in the election of King of the Romans, and won. He didn't enjoy the crown for long, though, and died shortly after. Jobst was not only politically astute, but also a very thrifty governor. Many rulers, including Sigismund himself, were financially indebted to him. In his day, it was said that it was Jobst, and not either Wenceslas or Sigismund, who was the true uncrowned sovereign of Bohemia. At the time our game takes place, however, he was in debt up to his ears. Interesting. Sir Markwart von Aulitz, 1360-70 to the 27th of December, 1402. Interesting. He was the hetman, or governor of Prague, who, much like those members of the nobility disgruntled with the reign of Wenceslas IV, saw in Sigismund of Luxembourg a better potential king. Their motivation had more to do with money and power. Wenceslas offered them no prospects, while supporting Sigismund promised them a better future position in society. We have a lot of these general things to go over, too. But I feel like I've been reading enough of these for now, so let's go ahead and get a move on. So, actually, let's go back to our quest. So we need to bury our loved ones in Skalitz and get out of the castle. Let's see. The threat of attack is gone, and I have to get back to Skalitz. It's my duty to bury my parents. Only, how can I do it? My lord forbids me to leave Talmberg. Yes, how indeed. Health. You can see your health in the red bar on the lower edge of the screen. The level of health also determines the maximum level of stamina. Yeah, so the more damage you take, the lower your stamina. I seem to have hurt myself by dropping off of there, which, only a little bit, but, you know, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Oh well, here we are. Okay, let's not drop off that. Turned out poorly last time. No reason to repeat. Our chickens. So I want to get back home.
Where did you hear such a thing? I hear our scouts found a fresh pile of human bones at the edge of Scouts Woods.
Mary, Mother of God, preserve us.
Hmm.
Well, the roads so they have to hire armed escorts, and them fellas don't come cheap.
On account of brigands like.
Aye, they're all over.
Damn Sigismund and his bloody heathens. In King Charles' day, we had peace and calm everywhere.
Those days are gone. God preserve us.
Yeah.
You know what I heard from the merchant who heard it from that man who was fighting them at Kuttenberg?
Strange clothes and
They say they can slice a cow or a man in two halves, from top to bottom, with one chop of a sword.
I heard they eat their prisoners.
And
make
that's
broth
not
from
all.
corpses.
They say they can take a man down with an arrow 10 fields away. And a dozen men is no match for one of them.
Spreading potentially misinformation about what's going on there. I don't really know, but hey, anything?
Good day to you.
That business with Sigismund turned out well in the end, didn't it?
Aye, that was a good start. Next, we need to drive him and his war whores out of Bohemia for good.
Let's see.
May the Lord watch over.
I don't really care about finding a. Ooh. A little bit slow down there. Where even is my horse? Doesn't much matter, I suppose. Well, I'm not really sure where the exit is, and I'm pretty sure I can't just waltz out of it anyway. Well, I guess the exit's probably this direction, isn't it?
Then it's better to have went that way with eggs and milk. He says there was nothing down below the castle, but up the top, the snow was ankle deep. The weather's gone mad, I tell you.
You say that all the time, and every year it's as mad as the
I heard they eat their prisoners and make broth from corpses.
Yeah, there's definitely some dialogue getting repeated. Hey, sir. So I guess there's not much for it. I don't really have a good way of leaving. Well, let's look at the map. So there's a trader, there's my bed, there's a baker. Here's Ravnia, here's Skalitz. Can I just fast travel there? How does that work? Not just yet. I'm not sure if I can just fast travel there or not. The door is definitely closed. Guess I can talk to Radham.
I need to get out of here.
And I need a feather bed with a comely wench in it. But it looks like we'll both be disappointed. Sir Divish gave orders not to open the gate, and you especially are not to be let out.
My mother and father were left in Skalitz like carrion. I have to bury them. I can't leave them to the dogs.
I'm sorry, my friend, but I can't. You'll have to persuade Sir Robard, or think something up so I don't end up in the shit for it. Otherwise, forget it.
All right, I'll see what I can do. Is there someone here who trades in goods?
Hungry, are you? You should go and see the cook. She's good-hearted, especially if you come with some coin. For anything else, you should see a fellow called Votava. Folk aren't too fond of him, because he's as surly as a wet cat. But he can get you just about anything. I saw him by the granary. You'll recognize him easy. He looks like he's never had a decent meal in his life.
I see.
May the Lord watch over you.
So I can't currently leave. I mean, I could probably injure myself by hopping somewhere, but that's not going to end well. So, oh, hi, horses. Well, I'm going to go ahead and solve this mystery next time, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and call this episode to a close for now. And until then, everyone, take care. And goodbye.